Welcome to Home Education Matters, the weekly podcast supporting you on your home education journey. Hello and welcome to Home Education Matters, and we have a super special episode today because it is my last podcast with Diane, my co-host Diane, and I'm very sad that she's going, but I'm also very pleased that she's going because it means that she's starting a new chapter in her home education journey. So Diane, tell us all about it. Tell us all about your news and what's happening with you.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Eleanor. It's lovely to be here again. And it is a bit sad, but also happy as well. So we've had about a year in home education now. So we took Rosa out at the end of year 7. So she's done the whole of year 8 in home education, and now she's just at the beginning of year 9. So she has, off her own back, decided that she's ready now to go back into some sort of educational establishment, and that's actually what she wants. Our home education journey is not quite at an end, but definitely coming to an end, I think. Or for now, anyway.
Well, yeah. What do you think sort of pushed her back towards wanting to go back into try a different school out?
I think the first thing is she's had time to recover. So she's recovered her mental health enough so that she feels able to make those kinds of decisions, which I think is really brilliant. And it was interesting actually, because as you know, it's Andy, my husband, who does the home education part of it, and he saw it as a bit of a failure. He saw it as, I'm not good enough anymore, and she wants to kind of not be here and do this. And I was like, well, no, this is an amazing achievement because she's recovered enough and she's ready to kind of have a new challenge, which for Rosa I think is really quite significant, because I think Rosa is a child who could be quite comfortable in her, in a very comfortable space, and actually for her to want to push out of that comfort zone just shows how much she has recovered. So I think that's the first thing. And I think she has sisters, so all of her siblings are in mainstream education. So I think she kind of watches them. Not that they all have a brilliant day every day or anything like that, but she obviously has some sense of probably missing out, I think. Not quite sure. She could probably put her finger on what she feels she's missing out on, but I think there is a little bit of that.
I would imagine it, like if you have 3 siblings that are all coming back from school and then they maybe going to meet up with their school friends or something, I can imagine that would be sort of quite difficult for her when it's just her and your husband at home.
Yeah, and it's funny really because Rosa is not by any stretch of the imagination a sociable person.
She's not a party girl.
Not a party girl, no. So that's interesting in itself actually, but I think she does want to be part of something, and I'm not sure she quite knows what that thing is, but I think she does want to feel like she belongs somewhere and she wants to be part of something,
So was it a choice that you offered up to her? So did you sort of get to summer and you were like, Rosa, what do you think? Should we carry on home edding? Do you want to try a school out? Or did she sort of proactively come to you and say, do you know what? I think I'm ready now for a school.
No, she was very proactive about it. We've always made it really clear that nothing is ever set in stone. So when she was at school, we were really clear about that doesn't have to be set in stone. And we've also been really clear about that in home ed, that this is not forever. If you want to return to school, that option is always there, and we will always try and facilitate that. So no, it was absolutely her coming to us, having made a sort of proactive decision about it. Which I think is amazing, actually, given who she is as a person, and feeling so unsafe in that first year of secondary school and actually wanting to try something out again. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, and I can see why you said to Andy that it's actually, it's a success because she now feels so safe and secure in who she is that she feels ready to try another school out. So what did you do when she said, okay, I'd like to try a school out? Was it a point where you thought, okay, is it the old school again, or was that always off the table?
Well, I did ask her. I thought it would be off the table, but I did. That's the first thing I said. I said, "Did you want to go back to your old school?" And she was very categorical about that. No, she didn't want to do that. And I think for Rosa, it's tricky because I don't think any mainstream conventional secondary school is going to actually be suitable for her, because they're all, clearly they all have their kind of strengths and weaknesses, and they all have quirks about them. But in my mind, most secondary schools are pretty much the same kind of thing. They're all pretty brutal, I think. They're all quite difficult places to be, and I can't see Rosa doing well in that kind of environment at all. So we've just been doing a bit of exploring, really, about what options are out there. She hasn't got an EHCP yet, but that's also been kind of running parallel, and actually her application's going to be heard at panel next week, I think.
So you were running that while you were home educating as well. That must have been hard.
We were trying to, but our local authority wasn't responding to any emails or anything, and you just kept getting this bounce back on the screen saying basically we've got no staff. So
wow.
So you'd never know if your emails kind of even got read, or but I had this phone call completely out of the blue last week, actually, from someone from the local authority apologising profusely for the delay and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I think Rosa's application is going to be heard at panel next week. So we might even be lucky enough to have an EHCP, which broadens our options a little bit if Rosa gets one of those or is considered eligible for one of those, because there are alternative provisions not immediately in our vicinity, but not very far out. So that would broaden our options. But we have found a school that we do like, which is mainstream, but really, really small. Really used to neurodiverse children, really used to children returning from home ed. So we're really hopeful that a space will become available in the next couple of months, I suppose.
That sounds perfect. And she's excited, is she, to go back to a school?
Yeah, I think she is. I think she is quite excited about it.
How does Andy feel then? Because it's going to be a bit of a shift for him, because he's got used to this role as sort of educator, and I know that he was sort of quite a planner and liked to sort of lay things out in advance and sort of know what you were doing. So he's going to have a bit of free time. So is he relishing the prospect, or is he a bit nervous?
I think he's probably a bit nervous. So yeah, so I think it'd be really good for him, because he can start getting on with his own stuff again, which has had to be put very much on the back burner. So Andy still does some work here and there, so he's still been doing that. But, he's a man with like lots of interests. He loves to, he's an artist, so he loves to do art. He loves to be in the outdoors, he loves to walk, he loves to sail, all of these things that he's not had the opportunity to do. And he's never complained once about not having the opportunity to do them, but suddenly they will become available to him again. So actually I think it's going to be really good for both of them.
Are you going to be giving him a list of DIY chores that you want done now that he's got time on his hands?
I daren't. That is definitely not how the dynamic works.
No, that wouldn't be really good, would it? Now you're no longer home educated, there you are, you can do all these things. So what's your timescale for Rosa go back to school? You're waiting for a school place?
Waiting for a place by Christmas at the latest is kind of what we're hearing. So we might have this term home edding still. We've just carried on with everything that we were doing before. So she's got a couple of tutors for a couple of subjects. We've carried on with that. We're also carrying on with kind of booking exam centres and things, just in case things don't kind of work out.
For next summer?
Yeah. So we might still kind of book those places and kind of just see how things go. So we keep all the options open. So we don't want to kind of close any doors for her that might be opportunities to the next step. So
if you spread out exams, even though she's in a mainstream school, you could spread out exams and it just takes a bit of the stress off year 11, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the school that we'd like her to go to is sort of very much very sort of supportive of that. If she does do her kind of English early or a maths early or something, they seem pretty supportive of that. So it's always a possibility.
What is the one thing that you would say you're like most looking forward to ditching off when you when you leave home education? Like, I mean, for example, I've got about a year to go in my home education journey, and I've got a list of things I'm looking forward to
Go on
ditching
now,
off. No, we'll get to that in a
let's
year.
hear some.
Because I'm still in the community for another year. So what
Ah,
about you? What about you? What is like the one thing that you and Andy maybe are sort of most looking forward to not having to do or not having to think about?
not sure what that would be actually. I think it might almost be having an opportunity to get back to each other a little bit. So before we home educated, Andy and I would, I mean, obviously we're both really busy. I'm particularly busy. But we would always take a day off a month for us to just spend together. We'd go walking on the moors or walking by the cliffs. We live in this wonderful place. So we haven't really done that very much since we've been home educating because we haven't I think we've both felt a bit guilty about leaving Rosa at home on her own, even though she's fine. So we've not done that. So I think that would be the thing that we'd kind of look forward to. So maybe there's a ditching off of responsibility.
Yeah, no, I completely get that because it is
Yeah.
a huge responsibility. And I think when you've been doing it a while as well, you kind of don't notice it anymore. And then when it starts easing off, like when my children became a lot more autonomous, for example, when my son was planning his days and contacting his tutors and stuff himself, I realized how much I'd taken on without realizing. And there is a lot of responsibility. And a lot of it's quite diffuse, where it's almost like anxious responsibility as well.
Mm. Yeah, and I think maybe that's it. We can kind of hand responsibility back to the state effectively for her education. Not that we wouldn't ever kind of, ignore that or anything. That we're not that way inclined, I guess. But yeah, we can hand some responsibility back and just sort of get on with some of our own stuff, I suppose.
I guess you'll also be looking out for how she's doing, and I guess you'll assess that from her response when she gets back from school, and I think you had a good sense that things weren't working at the last school, so you know the sort of things to look out for, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, she really kind of, her mental health really suffered. She was so withdrawn, and in some ways, you have to the distinction, isn't there? So there's very normal. She's 13, nearly 14. There's very normal kind of withdrawal, adolescent withdrawal. An adolescent does not want to speak to you when they come home from school necessarily, and that's completely normal. And for Rosa, it's probably even more normal because she's kind of, she's in her own world quite a lot of the time, or in a sort of slightly different kind of world to the one which the family probably occupies. But so it's just kind of maybe kind of having that distinction between actually what's normal for Rosa and what's slightly more concerning. So, and I think she'll be challenged. I think it will be a challenge for her, and I think there'll be times that she will kind of be surviving it a little bit, certainly in the initial kind of transition phase. I think she'll be really kind of surviving it. But I suppose for us, it's always about kind of what happens over time. So we tend to give things a bit of a shot, so we'll kind of be keeping her in school. If she goes back in January, for instance, I think we'd keep her in for the rest of the year and just sort of see how that goes. And then if we need to kind of pull her out again, we'd have no hesitation in doing that, I don't think now.
And what do you think is the thing that she's most looking forward to rediscovering or getting back to in the school system?
I think, and I don't want this to sound in any way kind of judgmental or anything, but I think with our kids, because they've not been home educated all of their lives, I think for Rosa, there's something about just wanting to feel normal, just wanting to feel the same as other kids, So her siblings are obviously still in school. The couple of friends that she has, they're in school. And I think for Rosa, she doesn't want to be different. She doesn't want to stand out as being different. And I don't think any kids want to stand out as being different particularly. So for her, I think it's that, and maybe just being part of a community again, even though Rosa tends to be on the periphery of the community. But
But it's
even
still a
that, I think,
sense. It's there. There's still a
yeah,
sense of solidarity, even if you're choosing to stand on the edge of the solidarity, right?
absolutely. And she's always been like that, she's always been kind of standing on the edge, kind of watching and observing and kind of learning, I guess. But for her, that seems to be really important. So, I think she'll look forward to that. And, maybe having a bit of diversity in her day as well, having, not just Andy, kind of, not that, there's anything wrong with Andy.
Poor Andy
I'm married
slogged
to
his
him. We
guts
don't want to
out for a
spend
year.
every day.
No, I know what you mean. I think
teachers.
teenagers in particular, I think they reach, particularly teenage girls, actually, I find it is they reach a particular age when they really do want to branch out and meet different people, and preferably a peer group. And there is,
Yes.
I think, particularly in teenage girls, there is a desire to fit in. There, that is really my son doesn't have it at all, but my daughter does have this sort of she hit puberty and then she was like, I want to, I don't want to stand out anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Rosa already has a sort of sense of difference about herself. And she's had that from a really young age because, she's neurodiverse, she's diagnosed with ASD. So she's always had a sense that she is a little bit different. And even in terms of just being a girl, she has a sense of difference. So she's not as, she's not in any way conventionally girly or anything like that. So I think she already has a sense of difference. So I think for her, it's about finding your tribe a little bit, isn't it? And sort of hanging out with those people that might be a bit like you.
Did you get a sense that that tribe existed at the school you're looking at?
Yeah, I think so, because they were so used to kids coming back from the home ed experience, and they were so used to neurodiversity as well. So that kind of, filled me with some hope that they would understand her and understand her needs, and the other kids would as well.
You've mentioned that you think that she's healed hugely over the last year. And I think probably, I'm assuming that the biggest gift that she's probably had from home ed is this time to heal and time to just relax into herself. What do you think is the thing she'll most miss about from moving from home education back into the school setting?
I think maybe just the lack of flexibility. I think she'll miss that. So, Andy is pretty structured with her and stuff, and she does follow a sort of curriculum, and she has tutors on certain days and things like that. But, a lot of the time, she'll say, I'm just going to go and read now. I'm just, going to spend the afternoon in my bedroom reading or whatever, and obviously she won't be able to do that anymore. So I think she'll miss that flexibility. And being able to do what she wants when she wants, and just being able to do her own thing, and being kind of given the space to do that, really.
What about you and Andy? What are the things that you two will miss the most, do you think?
I think Andy will miss it quite a lot because I think he's a bit of a natural born teacher. I think all of us would say that in the family. So I think, and he'll really miss the kind of close connection that they formed because he and her are very similar, and I think they really get each other. So I think he'll really miss that sort of sense of probably camaraderie that they kind of share, the in jokes and the, just the ways of being that are perhaps different from some of the rest of us in the family.
I mean, that's lovely that they formed that such strong bond over the last year. And I do think that one of the big advantages of home ed is the bond that you get with your child. But that never goes. Now they've formed that bond, that's it doesn't sort of disappear. So what about you? What are you going to miss about home ed? I know you weren't sort of quite so actively involved.
Yeah, I don't know really. It's nice having Rosa around. I do work a lot from home, so I am kind of around quite a lot. So it is lovely having her around. So I probably will miss her. It's a bit like my eldest left for university at the weekend, and I hardly saw her. Of course, she was 18 and she was out all the time and stuff. But I miss her too. So the absence will be kind of noticed, I think. But yeah, I think we'll just feel very anxious for her for a little while. So I think we just need to be aware of that. We'll just spend the day going, oh, I hope Rose is all right.
So you're going to go from spending your autumn feeling anxious about your oldest child at university to then spending the new year being anxious about Rosa at school.
Yeah, that's parenting, isn't it?
I was going to say, it's just one long anxiety trip, isn't it, parenting?
Yep.
Well, at least you are relinquishing some responsibility for the educational side. So that is a bonus in that way. And I think it's clear that as a journey, it's been wonderful for Andy and really, really, really good for Rosa. And I remember that lovely podcast that we did where you spoke to her sometime around the new year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
About the school experience. And I mean, it's lovely to hear how she's progressed in the time when she was home educating. And of course, because you're now not going to be home educating, you're stepping away from the podcast and you're leaving me to it. But it's been lovely having you as my co-host. And some of the interviews you've done have been my favorite episodes. They've been really fabulous. That interview that it was actually not really an interview, the chat that you had with Andy, your husband, the two of you, was really lovely. Actually, it was, I think we called it parents evening, didn't we? And it was a bit like a parents evening where you were talking to the teacher.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being with me on the podcast. It's been really lovely. Our first year as a podcast, having you with me on the journey has been really important to me. So thank you so much, Diane.
Oh, no, thank you. I've really, really enjoyed it. It's been such a lovely experience. And I've learned so much, actually. I've learned so much by kind of, because I was pretty new to home editing when we started. And gosh, yeah, it's a really steep learning curve, isn't it?
Yeah, you're now an expert. You've only done it a year and now you know more than lots of people who've been doing it 15 years. So that's pretty cool. Go on Mastermind and be like, my specialist subject is home education. Oh, you home educate? No, I only did it for a year, but I did a podcast. Now I know everything about home education.
Now I know everything.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining me today. And thank you for joining me on all the other occasions, Diane. It's been lovely talking to you.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you.
And now for a special announcement. As we are losing Diane from our wonderful podcast, we have a vacancy for a co-host. So if you've been listening to this podcast for the last year and you think, oh, that sounds a lot of fun, I'd love to get involved, and you're a home educator and would like to become a co-host on my podcast, do drop me a line, send me a message, go on my Facebook group, go on the Facebook page, get in touch, tell me a little bit about yourself and tell me why you would like to co-host the podcast with me. It would be lovely to meet some of you and to get to know all about your journeys and all about why you would like to join me as a co-host. See if you can follow in Diane's fabulous footsteps.